Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. First, thank you for coming to my channel. I appreciate you visiting. If you wouldn't mind hitting the like button as you leave, I appreciate that. That helps me out a lot. I wanted to thank all of my subscribers. We just passed 2,400 subscribers. That's amazing. Thank you so much. And I want to send a particular vote of thanks to all my patrons over on Patreon. So thank you guys for being such loyal supporters. If you're interested in supporting the channel in any way, you can check out the links in the video description down below. And there's a number of different things you can find there. You can find a link to Patreon, you can find a link to Buy Me a Coffee, you can find a link to my website. So check out those three links and let's get on our project here. So today I thought it'd be nice to do kind of a wraparound ring. I haven't done one of those in a while. And I'm going to use a trillion stone. Which is a triangle that has kind of a rounded outer sides. So it's a pretty amethyst, and I think it's a relatively simple project, so we'll see how it goes. But let's get started on it. So here's our stone for today's project. It's just a little purple trillion amethyst. Let's see what size he is. About a 7. So it's 7 millimeters per side. It's a nice little stone, and we'll make a bezel for it out of 26 gauge, 3/6 inch, 3/6. I always have trouble saying 3/16. 3/16 inch fine silver bezel strip is what we'll be using for the bezel. For the band, we're just going to use some 18 gauge sheet. And then we're going to use a little piece of 14 gauge wire. And the last thing we'll use is a little piece of 14 gauge wire, round wire that I just pulled out of the scrap. So I made a prototype yesterday, and this is kind of what I want it to look like. So we'll be making something like that today. You'll notice on my prototype I got the setting a little bit crooked here. I wanted it to be so this point pointed straight down this line here, so I'll need to do some correcting for that one. But yeah, and then the only other thing that's going to be sort of interesting is merging the piece of square, or excuse me, the piece of 14 gauge round wire into the bottom of the sheet here where you solder them together, so it looks like it kind of smooths together and becomes one thing. Transitioning from a flat surface to a round surface is kind of hard sometimes to do it smoothly, so that's what we're going to do. So what I did yesterday was I cut a strip, and this is what I think, I don't remember how long it was. I made it so that it would be enough to make like a size 7 or size 8. So I cut a rectangle like that, and it's about 3 3/4 long, I think. And it's about 1/2 inch wide, or 12 millimeters if you're a metric system person. And then what I did was I cut it diagonally right down the middle, leaving about a 2 millimeter flat end on either end here. So that's how I created this initial taper here. And so here's the other side of it. I cut it diagonally right down the middle of the rectangle. So I left it just as it was here. But that'll be where we start, I think. I'll get this flattened out a little bit and it's filed nice. Then we'll make a bezel for the stone. So I'll set the stone in these guys so I don't lose track of it. And then let's flatten this guy back out. I did something interesting too when I was cutting these. It curves when you cut it a little bit, like that. And because of the type of ring we're making, I kind of let it do that and left it that shape for the other side, and it worked pretty well. I'm just going to leave it like this and then file the edges smooth. You don't have to get too crazy at this stage. We can clean this up after we get it all soldered together. Let's make the bezel for the stone, and then we'll solder this little tail right onto here. and then we'll have to cut a little hole in the middle of the bezel there for the trillion, the point of the pavilion on the stone to sit down in, and then we'll. I think I'll probably put the bezel on first and then cut the hole. So we'll drill a hole and then saw it out into more of a sort of a triangular trillion shape. So, all right, so let's make a bezel for this guy. Making a bezel for a faceted stone, it's always easiest to set it on its top, at least if it's got it's a type of faceted stone that has a flat top. So I'm using 26 gauge, 3/16 inch fine silver bezel strip. And you never want to put a corner, a solder joint of your bezel on one of the corners if you're doing something with sharp corners, because that will cause a problem. So I'm going to bend it so that the end of it is going to meet the other end kind of in the middle of the side. I don't want to have a lot of excess space on these guys. There you can see where I'm at here. This guy a little flux. Could I was thinking about this. You could probably do kind of some textures or some hammering, or I don't know. You could reticulate it if you wanted to give it a little bit of character. I think I'm going to leave this one smooth, but I thought about that. Or you could, I guess you could stamp it with some cool designs. That would be kind of fun. I tend to make things with real sort of clean, simple lines. Every once in a while I'll add some texture, though. I do like texture. For years I never did anything textury, really. Not sure why that was. And I'm sitting here shaping this into a circle because I don't know why. Because I was thinking about something else. Alright, so we need to make this a trillion shape. The first thing to go is your ability to focus on more than one thing at once. Well, I think I nailed the size pretty good on this one. That's rare. No, I'm kidding. I'm usually pretty good at getting them pretty close to the size, but that's not bad. So I think in order to prevent what happened last time from happening, I'm going to try and point the point kind of at the center down here. mark like that so I can see where to point my, when I mount this on like this. I can also probably help with that. This is slightly angled that way. Just cut off a little strip like this and quit fooling my eye and making me think it's straight when it's not. So if I do it like that, I think that'll be pretty good. One thing we could do, if you wanted to, one of the things I was thinking about earlier, is right now this one, I soldered it on flat like that. If you wanted to, we could do a slight curve with that so it actually lays down on the finger nicer if you'd like. That might be kind of a fun variation to do. Should we do that? Let's do that on this one and see if it's an improvement. So what if we just tap this a little bit around? Doesn't have to be perfect, just has to have a little bit of roundness. Now the thing that we'll have to do is, because that matches up with this now, we're going to have to do a little bit of curvature on the bottom of the bezel, which I can do with the Dremel. So we'll just go over there and try that for a minute. Alright, so we need it to go like this, so there needs to be a little bit of a bump in the middle of this, carved out, with the point being the center there. So I'm going to use one of these abrasive white wheels. Kind of eyeballing a notch on each side, center. And we can just kind of like a little bit of a curve there. I can see that. Might need to do a little fine tuning in order to get it to sit real nicely on all sides. But that'll make it so that it'll sit down on the finger, the top of your finger a little bit better when you make it like this. I think this one I made the curve a little bit too steep, so I'm going to shallow that out just a skosh. I think we're probably close enough. So I'm going to go ahead and solder that on, and we'll cut a little hole through it. So if I do that, bend it like that, it should sit a little easier on there. And remember, I'm trying to point it right straight down the middle of this thing so it doesn't look tilted to one side or the other. Alright, so I got a few pieces of solder here. I'm trying to kind of dry the flux slowly on this one so that it doesn't... Sometimes when the flux boils it moves things around, and I didn't want that setting to move at all. So let's throw a couple of these guys in there. 2 is probably enough for those sizes. They're about 1/8 of an inch by 1/8 of an inch, maybe a little bigger. The only thing that really matters is they're touching the sides and the bottom. And in spite of the seeming sort of counterintuitive, if you're new to this, you gotta heat the entire thing. So now we got a bit of a curve. We're going to round it out. It's not going to be quite so flat on top of the finger there. I think I can start, I'm going to go ahead and snip off the excess and then get it kind of cleaned up a bit, and then we'll solder this tail end on, and then I think we'll pickle it And then maybe cut out the hole in the center before we finish it totally. Hopefully, got plenty of solder on the pad here. I use quite a bit of solder on this one because I'm going to kind of sculpt this into a merge joint. Quite a bit more mass in this than there is in the piece of 14 gauge round wire there. So you got to make sure to get the big piece hot too. The other one will get hot pretty quickly because it's so much smaller. But as always, they both have to reach that temperature for the solder to stick to them nicely. Let's cool this off and take a little closer look at it. Make sure everything's copacetic. Remember, still say that. Looks like it's at least a little aligned a little better than the first one, I think. So I do a little cleanup filing here. We'll do a little fine tuning later on, but generally what I wanted it to do. I'm going to heat it up and let it pickle for a while. And then we can cut out that little hole for the pavilion of the faceted stone. Then we should be able to polish it and set the stone. Okay, so I did a bit of Dremel cleanup, and I filed this down a little bit shorter. I probably will have to file it shorter yet, but I wanted to make a mark in the center of this, at least as close as I can to the center, so I can drill a hole there and then cut out kind of a little rounded triangle shape in the bottom for that pavilion of the stone to sit in there. So let's do that. I think I actually hit my mark there. Okay, let's put a drill bit in the Dremel. And we just gotta saw it a little bit. Put a little wax on here. And see if I can get this to be kind of the shape I need it to be. Okay, now I'm just going to try and clean it up with a file. Could put a ridge in there for this to rest on, but I don't know that we need to. I think that's going to sit pretty well like that. That's actually not too far from the height I want it to be, but I just wanted to get it ready for polishing, as I generally anymore I'm polishing things first before I set the stone, just to prevent any kind of unexpected stone tragedies. Okay, so I'm going to go polish this, and then we'll come back and set stone. Preliminarily shined up. I may do a little more final polishing once I get everything set. Whenever I have sharp corners like this, I usually file corners just a slightly bit thinner. You can't get too much. I've already gotten this bezel a little bit on the thin side by polishing. So I just want to make it so that when I do compress those corners in, they will have enough, not have so much material that it starts to wrinkle, which is one of the problems sometimes. Okay, so let's get it to sit in there straight. I'm going to do a dimple in each side a little bit to start with. Try and get it to sit without moving too much. This one's really hard to hold on to. Once it's not moving around too much anymore, then I can start pushing those corners over a bit. Trying to get kind of a symmetrical look around the top of the stone here. One of the things I struggled with as a beginner was my bezel's looking kind of rough. It worked for a long time to make that not the case. So generally I do pretty well, but every once in a while I have a rough one. So I may do a little final cleanup with maybe just a polishing wheel on the Dremel to try and get rid of that kind of rough spot that I created there. Okay, that's looking reasonably good. So let's bend it around the right angle. Let's see what happens. Probably got to do a little bit of manual bending here with the side. The only thing I didn't like about this particular one is I ended up with a little porosity where I soldered the two pieces together. So okay, so it's our ring basically. I'll do a little more cleanup and then I'll take some nicer pictures. Alright, that was the Wraparound Trillion project. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to hit the like button before you leave. And I'd love to have you check out some other videos and maybe subscribe to the channel. I appreciate comments and suggestions for videos in the comments down below. If you have an idea or a challenge for me, you know, put it in there. Maybe I'll do it. Thank you for all of the nice comments you guys have left in the past. Don't forget to check out the video description for some information about other links. I want you to know that I appreciate you watching. Happy silversmithing. Take care.